So now let's take a look at the ankle joint. So to understand the ankle joint, first off we need to start by understanding the talus. And we're not going to look at the bone in its entirety yet because it's a very complex bone. It's quite easy to teach about the femur when you compare it to something like the talus because there are many joints and they go in all different directions and you have convexities and concavities right next to one another, which creates very interesting movement patterns. But we're not going to look at all that yet. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the top of the talus. Now, this model doesn't disconnect, so I can't show you the top in this image, but the top of the talus is just under the bottom of the tibia. So we talk about the shin bone, and we said this shin bone bears most of the weight. You can see that very clearly when you just look at the skeleton, because the fibula comes off to the side of the foot, and the tibia rests down right on top of the foot and to the inside. So the talus has a top section that is like a hill, like a bump or a hill, and it's actually got a little bit of a groove in it. It's a light groove, but it's got a little bit of a groove which will correspond to the tibia. So it's actually quite nice to imagine it with your hand or even with just the back of your hand without the fingers. So that part won't represent the curve as well, but it will represent the fact that it gets wider at the front. And we'll look at that in a second. But so the bone is resting literally on top of the heel bone. So the heel bone and the talus are different bones. The talus is the topmost bone of the foot. So there are many different arches of the foot, and the talus is going to essentially be like a keystone. Once again, kind of like the sacrum. So the top of the talus, it's very smooth, and it's very much like a ramp. So just do this with your hands, and you can think about, okay, this is the shape where the lower leg bones are going to rest, this sort of ramp. Now, the bottom of the tibia has a correspondingly shaped concave shape that fits on top of the convexity of the talus. And then we've talked about this before, but the tibia will veer off to the inside of the foot, and the fibula will veer off to the outside of the foot. Now when you look at the back, it's a little bit easier to see. It's a little bit easier to see because when I flex the foot back this way, you can actually see the bottom or the back of this smooth ramp surface. And then in the front, you really can't see it great on this model, but if I do really flex that foot, then you can see the very edge of the smooth part of the talus in the front. So we're actually going to be able to touch those edges, what I'm showing you, in our own body, and we're going to do that now. But before we do that, the last thing I want you to see is that I talked about this sort of crescent shape of the fibula and tibia. We have that center gap, and then they grip the talus, the top of the talus. So the tibia is the main part that rests on, if this is my talus, the tibia rests on it. And if this were my left talus, the tibia rests on it, and then it rocks off the edge. So it's one bone that sort of rests in this L shape on top of this smooth hill-like surface. Now the fibula comes off the side. It doesn't really touch this top smooth surface. It comes off the side, and then there is a second little like step or kind of notch that the fibula rests on, right? But it's very clear just from that structure that the fibula isn't meant to carry a lot of weight. So if you want to touch this part of your body, what you're going to do is flex your foot forward and back, and when I pull it back, there's going to be these two tendons. Right? Now, if I go outside these two tendons and I kind of relax my foot, try to relax the muscles in your foot. When I take my foot down to the floor, I actually feel bone coming forward. And then when I pull my toes back up, there's no more bone. So there's like these little cups that are formed by tendons and muscle and bone and thing that I've got my fingers in. And when I put my foot to the floor, like I'm pushing a gas pedal, I guess it'd be a clutch. When I'm pushing a clutch, then that right there is the talus that's shifted forward under the tibia. And I've got my fingers here and here, and I'm actually touching these parts of the bone in the model and in my body. So that's the front of the talus. Now you can touch the back of the talus as well. This can be a little bit harder to find. And I've taught classes where people have reactions to this point, because this point is actually, in reflexology, some of the sexual organs and reproductive organs. I've had people have moments in class. But what I'm going to look for basically is this back part of the heel. It forms a bit of a ledge. If you start at the very back of the heel and you kind of follow that ledge forward, and then I go up and forward a little bit, the tips of my thumb and forefinger are touching the very back of the lateral and medial malleolus. So they're touching the very back of the bumps of the ankle, the inside and outside bumps. And when I'm there, I actually come inwards a little bit and back a little bit towards the Achilles tendon. So I'm kind of gripping the Achilles tendon. And when I flex my foot forward, as though it were pushing the clutch, then it's going to soften. And I can really kind of feel, once again, it's kind of like these cups, like I felt in front. And then when I pull the foot back, then it's not quite as prominent in my body. It's quite easy to feel the front. When I do that, it's like, there they are, they go away, there they are, they go away, there they are, they go away. The front corners of the talus. In the back, it's not quite as prominent or clear like that, but there is the feeling of a bone pushing out and back. And that is what you're feeling when you do that, the talus. So if I keep my fingers in both those areas and I push forward and back, I should feel it project out the front, then project out the back, project out the front, project out the back. So that is the top of your talus. Go ahead and try to find it on the other foot. And think about the fact now that there are no muscular attachments to this bone. It's the only bone in your body without any muscular attachments. That's very interesting to think about that, because that means this bone, its position, it's very much held in place by the strangeness of its joint connections beneath the bone, but it's really pretty much defined by how you use the rest of your body. So it's really a great bone to use for our standing posture and our balance, because it itself is balancing in the body. And to have great posture is, in some ways, beginning with having a great balance in the talus. And being able to feel these parts of the talus and then image the way the weight will travel, combined with your movement practices, is really going to help embody those efficient biomechanics, that efficient posture and efficient movement. So that is the top of the talus, and be sure to touch the two side bumps again. The sort of crescent wrench or lobster claw that is whoop, gripping the sides and top of the talus. If you enjoyed this video, sign up for the InBody Space newsletter and share the link with a friend. You can also find original content on Facebook and Instagram.